One, two, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Hey everybody, it's Sam Jacobs. Welcome back to the Sales Hacker Podcast. We've got a great show with a good friend of mine today, Ryan Lallier, who is a director of inside sales at InsightSquared. He's currently an individual contributor and has been a VP and has moved back and forth between leading teams and also carrying a bag and being an individual contributor at a bunch of different roles recently. And I think that trajectory is really, really helpful. It gives him a lot of empathy in terms of how he works with and serves the VP of sales or the VP of marketing. And it also is useful for you out there if you're thinking about making that transition from individual contributor to manager. So we're excited to have him on the show. Before we get there, we want to thank our sponsors. Our first is Lucidchart. The Lucidchart sales solution is the leading account planning platform for modern sales organizations. With Lucidchart, you can visually map out key contacts and crucial account data to uncover critical insights that will allow you to close bigger deals faster. So go to lucidchart.com/sales for more information. Our second sponsor is Outreach, the leading sales engagement platform. Outreach supports sales reps by enabling them to humanize communications at scale, from automating the soul-sucking manual work that eats up selling time to providing action-oriented tips on what communications are working best. Outreach has your back. Also want to thank some of the fans that have been writing in. Pierre Couture, Dan Boberg, Matt Doherty, Wolfgang, DePauli, Ramsey Marjaba, Morgan Ingram. Thank you, Morgan. Stephen Richardson, Nick Bontranger, Robert Outson, Nick Lepetsky, Luke Avedon, Timothy Hawley, Roberto Guerra, Mark Gray, Gabrielle Mazel Tarim, who's at Gong, I believe. Gabrielle, thanks so much for listening, and Dan O'Donnell. So everybody that's written in, I hope you've given the show 5 stars. Please give it 5 stars on iTunes. We're doing well. We've got a number of incredible guests coming up, including some folks from some huge companies. Today we got Ryan. Hope you like the show, and let's listen to my interview with Ryan Lallier. Hey everybody, it's Sam Jacobs. Welcome back to the Sales Hacker Podcast. On the show today, we are incredibly excited to have a good friend, a member of the Revenue Collective, but also a longtime VP of sales in the Northeast, in the Boston and New York City areas, and somebody that has a really interesting career journey to tell us about. So I'm talking about my friend Ryan Lallier. Ryan's currently Director of Enterprise Sales in New York and New Jersey for InsightSquared. But before that, he was the VP of Sales at an early stage company called YayPay. He was the VP of Sales at a place called Dataminr, which is, a unicorn in terms of valuation. He was a VP of Inside Sales at Jive. He's also been an individual contributor at Gartner. So he's moved around, and he's been both an individual contributor and led teams of people. And he's also just somebody that's incredibly passionate about sales. He runs his own podcast called Demo Like a User, and also is constantly contributing on LinkedIn, sort of insights, thoughts, and thought leadership, as we call it. So Ryan, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks, Sam. I appreciate you having me on.
We're excited to have you. So the first thing that we like to do is we like to hear your baseball card. I gave a little bit of background and context, but so your name's Ryan Lallier. Tell us what you're doing right now.
Yeah, sure. So I work for a company that's headquartered in Boston called InsightSquared. For those of you who have never heard of InsightSquared, we are a business intelligence platform. We help sales and marketing leaders see things more clearly in terms of just overall metrics, health of the business, forecasting, and pipeline management. I joined recently, so I haven't been there for too long, but enjoying the ride so far. We have a great executive leadership team and a phenomenal product.
What's the stage of growth that InsightSquared's at, if you're comfortable sharing, or what
Sure.
can you tell us?
Yeah, Series D.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So great. So I remember, the funny thing about InsightSquared, I used to know a guy named James Cohane in Boston. He was the very first head of business development for InsightSquared before there was even a sales team.
Oh, wow.
And that was like 10 years ago. The company's come a long way since then. So let's learn a little bit about you. So you just got to InsightSquared. What's your background? How long have you been doing sales?
Okay, yeah, sure. So I've been in sales since 2000. I fell into it accidentally, to be frank. I went to college to be a history teacher. And my intention was to get certified to be a teacher in the summer of 2000 and start my teaching high school football coaching career. That summer, while living in my parents' basement, I responded to, I'm going to date myself right now, but I responded to an ad that I found in the Hartford Courant for a company called Connecticut Telephone. And it was for a sales job. And I originally thought it was for a sales job selling cell phones at one of their local stores. So similar to walking into a Verizon store to buy an iPhone and a phone plan, I thought that I would be doing that for this company called Connecticut Telephone. What I didn't realize was that when I got to the job interview, I was meeting with the VP of sales and the sales director for the entire company.
Wow.
And yeah, so it's pretty neat. I also didn't realize that wearing a jacket, like a suit jacket to a job interview was the appropriate move. So when the VP of sales said to me, "Why aren't you wearing a jacket?" I looked him dead in the face and said, "Quite frankly, I can't afford one." So, yeah. So
That's a great answer.
Yeah. He was like, "Okay, well, I have good news for you. If we hire you, we're going to give you a $1,500 credit to Men's Warehouse, and you're going to get to go buy as many suits as $1,500 can possibly get you, but you have to promise you that you're going to wear those suits everywhere you go." So I said, "Yeah, for sure, I will certainly do that."
Wow. So you're from Hartford. Did I pick up on that right?
Yeah, I'm from Central Connecticut, from K through 8. So I'll speak in educational terms, but from K through 8, I was in Hartford, and then we moved to the town next door called Wethersfield, where I went to high school. So I got to play.
And you played football there?
I did play football there.
What position did you play?
Yeah. So my freshman year, I was a tight end, and then when the coaches realized that I had hands like feet, they moved me to guard. I dropped everything, so I basically got moved to guard, and I played guard for 4 years.
That was fun. I played strong safety back at Langley High School in Northern Virginia. So
I can see that.
That was before we knew the full impact of constant head trauma. I mean, we should have suspected, but regardless.
Yeah.
Okay, so Connecticut Telephone, they gave you a suit budget, and so that was back in the year 2000. So that was 19 years ago. What happened? Well, I mean, I'm sure a lot of things have happened since then, but give us a little bit of the career journey.
Yeah, sure. So I was with Connecticut Telephone, and I was working for CLEC. So you actually had Kiva Coulson on, I think, on one of the very first episodes, and his first job was also working for CLEC. So I was basically going into some really tough neighborhoods, doing door-to-door, knocking on the doors of small businesses and trying to sell them discount phone services and cell phones. And I did that for a year and a half. But while I was at that company, I made friends with some really awesome guys. And this one guy, Greg, who I'm still very close friends with to this day, ended up leaving Connecticut Telephone probably 6 or 7 months into his journey there to move to Boston to become a stockbroker. But what Greg knew was that every Monday I was required to be in the office, and I couldn't leave the office until I had 20 booked meetings on my calendar for Tuesday to Friday. So you literally had to cold call through the yellow pages and get your 20 meetings, get them into a calendar, and then show them to your sales operations or sales manager who kind of ran the call center that day, get approval, and then you can go home.
But so like Mondays you were an SDR, and then Tuesdays through Fridays you were like a full cycle rep?
Absolutely. But my friend Greg, very, very smart guy, knew that I'd be at my desk. So he would cold call me at my desk every Monday that I was there and say, "It's time to leave Connecticut. Connecticut's a bubble. You got to change. You got to come to Boston. We're having a blast here. There's tons of opportunity." And I kept blowing him off. And then one morning I woke up and I said, "You know what? I'm tired of doing this Connecticut Telephone gig. It's been great for a year and a half, but I do want to challenge myself and do something new." I was literally born and raised in Connecticut. I knew nothing more than living in Connecticut with my high school buddies and just working a job in Connecticut. So I walked in, I quit my job. The next day I packed my car. I drove to Boston. I called Greg on his cell phone and said, "Hey, I'm downstairs. Let me in." And he's
what kind of car were you driving?
I was driving a 1992 Saab 9000 that was literally on its last cylinder. And I'm not sure. Have you ever been in a car where the ceiling turns into like a tapestry, where it just starts to like collapse and fall, and you start putting
a little bit, yeah.
You start putting thumbtacks up there to kind of keep it in place.
And it's like the little cloth is like billowing, like maybe like a little tent or canopy or something like that.
Pretty much. So it was pretty embarrassing. But I drove that car. It made it to Boston. I had a futon mattress, an egg crate, some clothes, and like a little television. And I moved into this apartment in Boston without a job. My first job, though, was actually being a bouncer at a nightclub. And then I eventually was able to, through a recruiter, get a couple interviews. The one company was Paychex, and the other was called QAS, which later went on to be acquired by Experian. But I got an inside sales job for this UK expansion company. For whatever reason, they loved my background. The fact that I quit my job, packed up my car, drove to Boston with very little money and a broken car. And then I was working at a nightclub to make ends meet. So they hired me right on the spot. And that's when I really got into that true over-the-phone web demo, phone consultative type sale. And I did that for a couple of years. But I had a lot of success there. I closed logos like Bank of America, for example, closing a $55,000 deal over the phone when you're pretty young and just kind of cracking into your sales career is a pretty cool accomplishment. So from there, I spent a long period of time. I was in Boston for about 12 to 13 years. And it wasn't until I landed at a company called Thinking Phones. I got my first inside sales manager or first manager job where I was managing our West team. So I was handling all the SDRs and the AEs, selling an SMB and mid-market. We were selling UCaaS, so cloud-based telephony services, similar to like an air call, for example.
Yeah.
I did that for a while. One of the original founders there, this guy, Mike Liddell, who I owe a lot of my success to today, just came over to me and said, hey, look, I've been here for a long time. I'm going to be leaving the company soon. I really like what you're doing. Would you come with me and work with me in a few of these businesses that I'm going to put money into? And I'm going to try to fix them and make them better and all that good stuff. And here's the game plan. But I need someone like yourself that can come in and really just immerse yourself into the business, get the SDR program up and running, create demand that's really super organic, get the AEs buttoned up, put a process in place, teach people how to run a discovery call, teach people how to do a demo, how to close deals, inject sales methodology into the culture. Will you do that for me? I said, sure. I'm happy to do it. What does it involve? He goes, well, the company's headquartered in New York City, but what I want to do is I want to open up an inside sales office in Boston. So I'm going to need you to just research office space, set up a whole outfit, a whole program there, and get that situation up and running. I said, sure, sounds great. But while I do that, can I go to New York and back a few times a week so I can learn about the company, get trained, learn about people who are going to be supporting me in my role, and just really again, ingrain myself into the culture of the business. Looking back, I'm glad that I did that, Sam, because what I realized was that the last thing the company needed was another satellite office. We already had our engineering group in DC. Our headquarters was in New York. I kind of felt like the company was a bit disjointed culturally. There's some people that probably shouldn't have been there, that were there too long. And if I were to go set up another office in Boston, I felt that the company would be even more divided than it was based on my observation of going there for a month. So I convinced Mike to allow me to move to Manhattan. But the deal was I was coming back to Boston in a year. I was going to go down there, fix everything, build a really cool sales team, but then I'm getting the heck out of there. Fast forward to today, I'm still in New York. I was a sales leader a few times here. As you mentioned, for Dataminr, I built their inside sales team from 0 to 16 people, several $1 million in ARR, put that whole program in place. I did spend some time with Gartner. I was the VP of sales at YayPay, and now I'm with InsightSquared out of Boston.
Wow. So there's a lot to talk about, and we were texting and emailing back and forth about this journey of becoming a team lead, running a team, and then becoming an individual contributor. What are the lessons that you've learned over the last couple of years? You've run big teams, and then Dataminr, you built a team up to 16 people. You then left to become an individual contributor. You then went to YayPay to build a team again. You're now an individual contributor again.
Yep.
What have you learned? What are the themes as you reflect back on the last 10 or so years?
Yeah. Well, the one thing that I lacked early on in my career was patience. I would just say that when I was younger, I lacked patience. And I don't want to point the finger or place blame on any one individual or individuals, but it's important to understand that my upbringing might be a little bit different than some folks that go into, let's say, just sales and business as a whole. And what I mean by that is my dad was a carpenter, my mother was a waitress and a bank teller. So my two brothers were both an electrician and a plumber. So for me, I didn't really have any business people around me. I only knew blue collar, just get up, go work, grind, make a paycheck, and that's great. In fact, my guidance counselor in high school recommended that I don't even go to college, that I enter the trades.
Seriously?
Yeah,
Wow.
Yeah, he did. And he's like, you should, your grade point average is a little bit low. You're very low in terms of where you rank in terms of, graduating. At the time I was like 174th out of 196th on my senior in my class. And obviously that's not good, but there were options for folks like me or kids like me that would want to go to college. I could have gone to a community college or taken some courses over the summer to get my grades up. Fortunately for me, my brother Brett, when I came home and said to my brother Brett, I said, Brett, I want to be an electrician. I'm not going to go to college. And he basically said, over my dead body, you're going to college. you're absolutely going to go. We got to find you. You got to figure it out. So I found a two-year college. I got my associate's degree, got my GPA way up. I worked a bunch of jobs. I played lacrosse in college, and then I transferred on to eventually get a BA. So
you played lacrosse in college. Did you play lacrosse in high school?
I did not. I was a walk-on freshman year.
That's awesome. So you're clearly a good athlete.
I think I was more focused than anything else, and I wanted to be a part of something, right? Like I wanted to, be around other individuals that were kind of on a schedule. And I want to have some discipline. Like at 3:00, I'm at practice, right? So everything just kind of like revolves around my schedule. Those that go to college and don't actually have like a schedule, or have like things to do to keep themselves busy, they might fall off track, like I did in high school. Yeah. So I want to make sure that I was just staying consistent there. But yeah, so patience was like the big one for me. But I found that like I gravitated towards startups. Like I just loved being at startups. I'm wired. I have an entrepreneurial wiring. There's the way that I would describe it. I'm just very into building something from the ground up and watching it flourish. Or in some cases where I ended up going to, those organizations didn't flourish. So the beginning of my career was all as an individual contributor. It wasn't until I left HubSpot and went to Thinking Phones, where I became an inside sales manager and realized that I really love leading others, and that my 12 to 13 years of being a salesperson is super valuable to these, young guys and gals that are just starting off in their sales careers.
So, and then how do you think about the difference between being an individual contributor and a manager? I put this thing up on LinkedIn talking about how, there's this story that we tell basically high-performing individual contributors that maybe we don't think can be great managers, that, it's okay, pursue the individual contributor track. That can be just as rewarding, as lucrative, as important as being, ultimately a manager, then a VP, then hopefully like in the C-suite and leading groups of people. And I felt like that's not quite true. But what do you think? You commented on that post.
Yeah, well, I agreed with you on that post, and I thought about it over the weekend, and I still agree with you. But my opinion comes from, obviously, a vantage point that some of the other folks that commented might not have access to, right? So because I was an individual contributor and a VP of sales, and I went back, I've seen both sides, right? So I know what it means to, negotiate your severance, or to ask for equity, when you go to become a VP of sales. I know what it's like to report to a board, and take a bunch of, punches and deflect a bunch of things. So I just know what that's like. And what that has allowed me to do as I go back to an individual contributor is understand that the role of a leader, and I'm just going to use VP of sales right now, is a very difficult role if you make it difficult. And, or it can be super easy. You said it best when I started at YayPay. You said, Ryan, your number one job is to make the life of your founder as easy as you possibly can make it for he or she. And I definitely agree with that. And, that's great responsibility, to have, unless you're an individual contributor and then a leader at one point, it's really kind of hard to connect those two things. And when you go back to being an individual contributor, you really, really understand the role of the VP. You really understand like the information and the data that your manager actually needs so that they can go report up and do their job effectively. I might be getting a bit off track here, Sam, but I look at it that you're absolutely right. If you want equity, if you want to level up, if you want to lead others, it's a lot harder to do it as an individual contributor. I'm having an easier time doing it at InsightSquared, meaning leading others and setting an example, because of my background in doing it before. And then the buyer persona that we sell to at InsightSquared, they're sales leaders, they're growth leaders. They're in sales ops. These are people that I've worked with side by side, shoulder to shoulder, to accomplish some really awesome things at companies that I worked at before. So I can speak to them intelligently. I can make really good money in my role because I understand them, but I'm not going to get more shares or more equity, or if there's a massive event like an IPO or we get acquired, I'm not the one who's going to walk out the door with a huge paycheck. So, I hope I'm answering your question. I hope it's coming together okay, but that's kind of like my take on it and just my viewpoint.
Well, do you miss being a VP when you reflect back on the last couple roles? Are there lessons that you've gleaned, like things you would do differently? Yeah. How do you reflect on that experience?
Yeah, look, if I'm being frank, I don't miss working for founders. especially those who are not serial founders. Like you and I talked about deal assessment in a sense of, hey, this is the company that I'm going to go work for. Let's break it down as if it's a deal, right? So I look at it like, all right, is this company, do they have sound leadership? Has this founder done this multiple times? Does he or she have multiple exits? Because those learning.
What happens if they don't have that? What are the things that you see emerge? And we don't have to name
No.
names. We can all of the founders you've worked with into like one big conglomeration. But like, what are the things? What happens with a first time founder that doesn't happen with a serial entrepreneur?
Sure, the first time founder lacks a little bit of maturity. They lack a lot of trust in someone like myself. I find that first time founders, and you may agree or disagree, they go through their first 2 or 3 VPs quite rapidly. They don't hold on to that individual long enough to really see it through and give that person an opportunity to flourish. Where a seasoned entrepreneur would understand that it's going to take my VP at least 9 months to get up and running, at least 9 months to understand our product through and through, our markets, who we sell to, how to articulate the product on their own, and at least 9 months to really get their head around what kind of team I really want to build and focus on the metrics that matter. And if you have a founder that, quite frankly, just hasn't had experience doing that before, it's going to be a tough battle, because you're going to be coming to the table with data and proof points that are current to the business, but also reflective on the things that you've learned in the past. And those lessons are really, really important to share with the founder. Hey, look, I've walked this walk before. You can trust me in this category. Otherwise, why'd you hire me? So I found that that's where the main friction for me, whenever I had an issue with a founder, that's really where it lied. It was just like, you're not hiring, like you're not letting me kind of do the job that you hired me to do. There's certainly a trust factor here. And if you got burned by a VP before, I'm sorry to hear that, but we have to hit the reset button here and give each other the opportunity to grow.
They seem sometimes seems like, my experience is the other, meaning the person outside the company, always seems a little bit more exotic, attractive, like, the grass is always greener, that man or woman that you can't date, so you think that they're going to be the most amazing partner. And then sometimes when you get into the company, the sheen wears off of that person. So they spend sometimes more time recruiting the new potential VP than they do allowing themselves for that VP to build out and develop and execute their plan.
I agree. I totally agree.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think that there's a lack of patience?
I think there's pressure, obviously, from investors, quite frankly. What I didn't realize, and I won't name the company, what I didn't realize was the amount of stress the business was under the year prior. I didn't realize that my predecessor really put a lot of strain on the business, really jacked up the burn rate of the business, so that I was actually walking into things and this is my own fault. I should have asked these questions during the process, right? I should have known that these are the top 3, or these are 2 or 3 questions I did not ask that I should have had answers to, which would have allowed me to make a better decision. So I walked into a very stressful, high pressure environment that I really wasn't aware of. And you don't really realize it until you're 90 days into the job, and you're like, okay, wow, we definitely have some deep rooted issues here that we have to fix really, really fast. So that impatience, the anxiety that the founder is now experiencing, well, guess what? It trickles down to me. So that's where I think it comes from.
I know that there's I know a lot of people that have really loved working for you.
Yep.
And you've developed and groomed a lot of incredible account executives and managers. Putting the founder aside, when you think about what it takes to be a great leader or manager, what are the things that emerge for you when and if you get a team again? What are the principles you're going to put in place to make sure that you can help develop these people?
Yeah, well, I think it starts with, I'm a strong believer that the sales leader has to be the best recruiter in the business. To all my talent folks out there, all my talent teams and talent leaders, I love you. I need your help, and I support you. But at the end of the day, that number is my number. And at the end of the day, I have to build a team that I know is going to have the ability to go out and execute. So when I landed at Dataminr, for example, I went over to the recruiting team. They're one of the first teams that I've introduced myself to. And I said, can I please have a LinkedIn recruiter license? And they're like, what? I said, did you mean sales nav? I go, no, I want a LinkedIn recruiter license. I want to have my own set up for recruiting in LinkedIn. They're like, yeah, sure, we guess. So they gave me a license. Well, that allowed me to go in and build my lists of the SDRs that were at other companies that I wanted to try to pull them out of. I got to build my list of AEs with backgrounds that I knew would be a good fit for Dataminr. I got to build templates and cadences and just kind of get that whole recruiting engine almost automated. So I was able to reach out to people and say, I love your background. I love what you're doing. Can we talk? Even if you're not looking, if you're passive and not looking to make a move, that's great. But let's start the relationship now because I'm planning on being here for a long time. So I did that as step one, and that really just allowed me to kind of build out my own pipeline. You can't rely on others all the time. You have to really start to build out your own pipeline there, and that's what I did. And the second place that I went to in the business was, where's the onboarding program? What does it look like? Walk me through it. It was non-existent. Okay, cool. I said to my president, do I have your blessing to go build my own 2-week boot camp? He said, sure, take a crack at it. So I did. So I built a 2-week boot camp, like an actual training program that from my previous roles as an IC and a manager, I put all of those core ingredients together into what would make a successful onboarding program successful if I was a new person coming in. And I built that out. And then the third piece was I put a certification process in place. No one's on the phone until you can demo the product effectively. I'm not asking you to be the best person in the room demoing the software, but like the core components to being a successful salesperson, how to articulate this product is something that you're going to have to start taking steps towards mastering, because most of what we sold was sold over the phone, which is a very hard thing to do. So those are like the big three things, or the three big building blocks.
Those are, it's that the point that you made about recruiting is critical. I think when you're an individual contributor thinking about becoming a manager and ultimately a VP, I think that's the part that's not eminently clear, which is that your first job is to make sure that people, the way I describe it is people want to give you their careers. Because when someone chooses to work for you, that's what they're doing. Yeah. They are leasing their career to you for whatever period of time they work for you. And I'm a big fan of your podcast. I'm like a user, and I've listened to a lot of the episodes, and you always have great insights on how to be a great salesperson. And I know that sometimes when you see lazy salespeople on LinkedIn or that are reaching out to you, you get frustrated. Yep. So if you're thinking about, and now you are yourself an individual contributor, probably expected to close a couple $1 million, in 2019, or at least on a 12-month basis. Sure. What are your lessons? What do you think people should do? What do you think people are doing wrong when it comes to actually being great at sales? Yeah, sure. So there's a few buckets. The first bucket kind of goes back to being, patient. And it's hard to do when you're starting your career in sales, or you're 4 or 5 years in, and you have this manager that is very metrics driven, or putting a lot of demand on the output, right? The amount of calls, the amount of emails, the amount of touches. Those things are all very, very important. But what I try to instruct or teach sales reps to do is just imagine for one day that you are the recipient of 200 emails coming from individuals just like you. Don't get caught in the trap that your competitor is the product you're selling against. Your competitor is the individual who is trying to get time from the same person you're trying to get time from. That's the biggest challenge of all. And you have to learn how to master that. And it starts with really, really good research, understanding your buyer, and sending over messages that resonate. And do not have this disjointed process where your email sounds like one version of yourself, and you leave this voicemail that sounds like the complete antithesis of the person who sent the first email. All that stuff has to run in parallel. Like that text, when it's delivered through the voice, has to feel the same. Let your personality shine, but demonstrate the fact that you've done your research. You have done everything you can to attempt to earn that person's time. And that's really all around like the prospecting piece, but it's where I see a lot of salespeople fail. They think, it's an activity-based sport. The more touches, I increase my chances. Yeah, that might be true, but as you level up in your career and you sell into larger deals, I could tell you that, a CMO, a CFO, or any C-level executive in a $3 billion publicly traded company does not want to be on your 13, 14, 15-step cadence. And they're going to tune you out, and they're not going to see your emails anymore. But if you really do your research and you understand the business, heck, there's so much information at your fingertips now that it's disrespectful to not take the time out of the day
to research the company and reach out with an intelligent message and a reason to talk. So I tend to really just put a lot of emphasis on that. And I know that it's hard because the business demands, a high amount of metrics because they're all looking at reports and that's all they see. But I'm really big on the output. Like, great, you did 1,000 phone calls this week and booked 2 meetings, but Samantha sitting next to you put out 250 activities that were really, really, really good, and she booked 6 meetings. So who would I rather have? So I think we've taught salespeople to go as fast as they possibly can, automate the job. It's not a job that you can automate. It's still a people sport. And I like to see it kind of return back to the center a little bit of like slowing down, just like do the research and just like earn people's time the right way.
What do you say to people that say, I don't have time to do that? And what are tips? Do you structure your day in a certain way? Do you set aside certain blocks of time for prospecting? Like, what advice would you give to the person that's making that excuse that I don't have time to be thoughtful? Ryan, I'm sorry. They're telling me I got to do 100 dials every day. I'm on an auto dialer. I don't even know who I'm calling half the time.
Yeah, I know. And that's a tough situation to be in. Again, I get it. As an individual contributor and as a manager, you want to see those top line metrics. If I was going to automate anything, which I do, I automate information that comes to me. So obviously Google Alerts is like a no-brainer. But if you're not joining those groups within LinkedIn that are made up of your buyer persona or buyer personas, you're hurting yourself. And I'm not saying you have to go in there and you start picking people off and sending them sales emails, but you need to watch the conversation, because those conversations that are taking place on Quora and LinkedIn groups, those are at the tip of the spear, or front of mind, if you will, of what your buyers are actually talking about and caring about right now. There is no more relevant information or compelling event that you can grab onto than seeing what your buyer persona is talking about right at this moment. And that allows you to take that conversation, reframe it. And then if you want to put that into a cadence, I totally understand. Hey, I was in a recent chat room in a LinkedIn user group. Your peers are talking about this. Here's how we as an organization can optimize that for you. I'm obviously being very high level, but that to me is a bit more personal and a bit more of a legitimate attempt to reach out to someone with something of value because it's current and you know that person is talking about it. So I would automate that part, automate the information that is coming in to your inbox that's going to just equip you to be a better salesperson and just sound more intelligent. Yeah, the other piece, look, you have to block out the time. I put a comment about Slack overload last week on LinkedIn. It's not because I'm anti-Slack. I love Slack. Slack is awesome.
You got to be into Slack if you're a member of Revenue Collective.
I know. I'm in there a lot. I'm in there a lot. I hear you. I love Slack. Especially like at 6 a.m. on a Sunday morning. London's up. They're just talking about all kinds of stuff. I'm like, I got to turn the notifications off. But trying to relax on the weekends. It's hard with Revenue Collective Slack growing. But it's a lot. So it can be intrusive to your day. So learn to turn things off. You got to turn Slack off sometimes. It can wait. If someone needs you, they'll walk over and they'll talk to you. But blocking out time throughout the day is definitely critical. But it's not just like I see people block out time block prospecting. That's not good enough. Like, what do you mean time block prospecting? Put that, time block researching the following 4 companies. I'm going to dig out 4 to 5 individuals in each company. I'm going to build mini bios on them. I'm going to connect the dots, find 3 or 4 news-related events in each of these companies, and tie it back to how I can help this person achieve X, Y, and Z. That's much more tactical. And that way your brain is focused for that 1 hour, 2 hours on just executing on those like little small steps.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. Let's say we get the meeting, because I know that you've also got a lot of really interesting thoughts about, it says how to demo like user. So clearly getting the meeting is not the end of the sales process. You have thoughts on proper discovery and proper demos. What are your key, particularly in the mid-market and SMB space, we're in a 30 to 60 day sales cycle.
Yep.
And I'm trying to do a great job as an individual contributor. What advice would you, Ryan, give me if you were my manager?
So prior to going into the demo itself?
Yeah. And also like how to think about running the discovery the right way, how to run the demo the right way. Like what are the themes, the principles that, if you're going to build out a sales playbook as a new VP of sales, that you would make sure that they're in there?
Yeah, sure. So research leads to confidence, and confidence leads to really good questions in discovery. So that's been my method since the beginning or as far back as I can remember. Going into a sales meeting, there's always a little bit of anxiety that comes along with it. Going in front of a room of individuals to present, there's always some anxiety that comes along with it. You just never know how the meeting is going to go until the meeting actually kicks off and you're live and you're on stage and you're performing. So practice definitely helps, right? So the research that you do up front will build that confidence, and you can literally write out all of the questions that you might want to ask. I tell a lot of my reps, if you're going to, it depends what kind of product you're selling. So I'll just use my example. I've typically am selling to CROs, VPs of sales, senior VPs, operations leaders, and marketing leaders. So I'm going to go to their career page and see if they're hiring for roles in marketing, sales, and operations. I'm going to read the key requirements of each of those roles, because those key requirements for each of those roles tell me a lot about the demands of the business and what they're trying to achieve. I can reverse engineer those into questions, and that's just going to get my person talking and building up that comfort level. And it also demonstrates that I have a sound understanding of not only the company, but what they're trying to achieve as a business through these key hires that they're looking to make. So all that prep, all that research is definitely going to lead to a really good discovery call. I also believe that the demo should be a formality. It should not be this like super deep dive, click a bunch of buttons. What is this? What is that? I call it the haunted house when that happens. You basically go into this haunted house and you have no idea how to get out, because now you have a bunch of people asking all these questions or doing stump the chump. You know, the IT guy gets on who shouldn't be on the call to begin with, like all of those things. So just have an understanding of who's showing up before the call is definitely something that I would certainly hone in on, and just try to get a grasp for as much of the business as you can and ask really good questions and set yourself up for a good demo.
Any good strategies for closing? Let's say we had an amazing discovery. Again, we're thinking like a maybe $15,000, $20,000 price point. This isn't a 9-month enterprise sale.
Yeah.
We've got some interest. What are your closing strategies?
I'd wait till the last day of the quarter and I would send a coupon through email. Wait, that doesn't work? I would do a 20% off flash sale at the end of every quarter, 20% off.
Every day.
Yeah, no, every day. I mean, yeah. Act now. We're raising our prices next month again for the 11th time this year. But you should really sign up right now.
That doesnthis work?
No.
That's what I tell people all the time.
I mean, I don't know. It might work, but for like gym memberships, I don't know if it works for
what do you think works?
That's a tough question, man. What do I think works just for like a standard closing technique, huh?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I honestly give, I've been in some conversations as like a kind of advisor consultant to a bunch of super early stage companies. And, and the founders, who are wonderful people, really truly are wonderful people in the cases that I'm thinking about, and sweet individuals. But they say, I had this great meeting. How do I turn it into a customer? What do I do next? How do I get them to sign something? Mm-hmm. What would you say? I mean, do you have any ideas, thoughts, just key principles, key questions that you immediately ask? Yeah,
sure. So I would say, how big is the organization? And then they'd say, it's a 200-person organization. Great. How many people in that organization know that you're having a conversation with Sam? How many other individuals in that business are you speaking to? How many other individuals in the business are aware of the fact that our product even exists, and that there is an opportunity for our product to have a major impact on that company? When they start going down, I'm just talking to Sam only. Sam says, he's the guy. He can see this thing through. He can run it through. That's more of like a sales methodology thing, but that's when I start to get a bit worried. So I typically feel much more comfortable asking for the business when I know that I'm able to impact several individuals in the company simultaneously through the acquisition of our product. I think a lot of reps are just scared to ask for the business. Have we done enough to earn your business? Like a very simple question that I hear no one ever ask anymore. It's just, it's not an art form. It's not even a science. It's literally just a question. Like, did we do enough to earn your business? You'd be shocked at what happens. No, not yet. Okay, great. What's lacking? What's missing? What questions haven't I answered? Why are you not comfortable at this point? We've had 17 demos. Why are you not comfortable buying? You just have to ask these questions. Like, why? I don't understand. Like, explain it to me. I think that can go a long way. What I found is that when you are truly talking to a decision maker and you ask them why, they will answer you. When you're talking to someone who is maybe like on like the cusp of being like a champion, maybe can kind of get you to a few people, is willing to take a call with you, but will not answer the why, you're probably talking to the wrong person.
Yeah, because they don't know.
Yeah. Or maybe they do, or they just don't have the power to do anything about it. Like, I'm clearly talking to someone who can't buy anything. I mean, I'm at InsightSquared. I get in-mails all day long trying to sell me different products. And I'm like, if this person just did the research and just mapped it out, did like an org chart, they would know that I literally can't even buy toilet paper for InsightSquared. Like, I can't buy someone lunch, and you're asking me to like look at your $35,000 SaaS platform, and I'm like, I'm not your person. You got to keep digging. So, yeah,
I think, their perspective somewhere in the organization, the perspective is that the level of rigor and preparation and, the information that they would need at scale to understand that about every single person they send an email to would be cost prohibitive. That's probably their answer.
Perhaps. Yeah.
We're coming to the end of our time together, Ryan, at least for this episode.
Okay.
How do you feel about that?
I don't know. I'm a little nervous with five minutes left. I mean, anything can happen right now. So let me grab my desk and make sure that I'm securely fastened here.
So I'm sorry to tell you this, but this is going to be your last day on the Sales Hacker podcast.
That's okay.
Pack your shit and go, buddy.
Damn it.
My question is, we have this thing where we pay it forward. Basically, books that you read, podcasts that you really enjoy, sales leaders that you look up to. Yep. Give us some of your influences, people that we can who's impacted you in a really positive way.
Sales leader Sam Jacobs all the way. Number one.
I Venmo'd you your check. Thank
you very much. Yeah, no problem. Look, I had the unique pleasure of being a sales rep at HubSpot when it was pre-IPO. I had the unique pleasure of really understanding what a truly transparent organization looks like when they're leading others. Things like cost to acquire a customer and why that matters. How many leads we're getting from marketing and what that's supposed to translate into in terms of potential deals that we can close. How much money is in the bank? What it takes to go IPO. Here's where we're trending. Yes, Salesforce called and tried to buy us. And yes, we said, get the heck out of here. We're not for sale. And that was Mark Roberge. That was Brian Halligan. That was Mike Volpe. I mean, that leadership team is one of the best I've ever had the pleasure of just working for and learning from, just as a sales rep. So if you haven't read, Mark's blueprint on basically how to go from 0 to 100 million, I highly recommend getting that book into your hands. I like Influence a lot. That's a really good book. I actually found out about Influence because one of my favorite podcasts is Seeking Wisdom by Dave Cancel and the guys over at Drift. So I love their product. I love the podcast. It's a nice free-flowing type vibe to it. And I just think that they deliver some really, really good content, both in like life lessons, how to run a business, and just like some general marketing tactics that really anyone can apply, whether you're in sales or marketing. So is that helpful? I mean, those are just a couple that I could name off the top of my head. Yeah,
super helpful. The book that Ryan was talking about, Sales Acceleration Formula, huge book. Everybody's read that.
Yeah.
So
I hope everyone's read that.
A lot of people have. It reads really easily, and it really distills business into a very understandable way, which, the key of business is, this is a bit of an aside, but something I've been thinking about is just, you got to do things the same way every time. And that's how you get predictability by definition. And if things are happening slightly differently every time, then that's by definition a lack of predictability, which is why you put in an onboarding program right when you got to Dataminr, because you need to train people in the same way every time in order for them to produce similar kinds of results.
Correct. Yeah.
Ryan, there's people out there that are listening, probably want to talk to you about your career journey. Maybe they're individual contributors thinking about making the jump to manager. Are you okay if people reach out to you on LinkedIn and if they're not trying to sell you something for $35,000 when you can't buy toilet paper?
Yeah. So first of all, if you want to sell me something, you can continue to email me and in-mail me. That's totally fine. I'm just going to be very candid, honest with you and let you know that I can't buy toilet paper. If you want to call me about career advice and talk to me or in-mail me or email me, of course, my inbox is wide open. I love talking to now listen, even if you're not in sales, but you're thinking about getting into sales and you want to talk to me, reach out anyway. I'll talk to anybody that wants to take time out of their day to hang out with me. So I'm happy to.
So how do we do that? What's your,
well, my email address, am I allowed to give my email address away on the podcast?
Yeah, we give an email address away every single episode. Dude, do you not listen?
I only listen to I only do Friday fundamentals, not money and motivation. So I'm sorry. Yeah, it's Ryan Lallier at gmail.com. And then obviously I'm on LinkedIn, Ryan Lallier on LinkedIn. You can hit me up there too.
Awesome. Ryan, thanks so much for being on the show. And we will talk to you in this upcoming Friday for Friday Fundamentals.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. Take care.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Hey folks, it's Sam Jacobs. It's Sam's Corner. I really, really like that conversation with Ryan. You can hear, he comes from a completely blue collar background. His guidance counselor told him not to go to college, which, I guess I'm sure, I read a lot of VCs out there, like a lot of super rich white people are telling everybody else that college may not be the best investment. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not. But all of those people that give that advice typically did go to college. So we got to look at how they voted with their feet in addition to their sanctimonious advice. But the point is that he, went to college, didn't have a great GPA in high school, ended up doing really, really well, and ended up getting a great sales job at Connecticut Telephone, where they got him a $1,500 budget to Men's Warehouse, and he hit the phones, and all day Monday he would have to book 20 meetings so that the rest of his week was filled out. From there, he moved into sales in Boston and New York. And there's just a lot of great lessons. One of them is really about picking the right company, right? So he mentioned that, the serial entrepreneur, the serial founder, he puts a little bit more emphasis on and has more confidence in than a first-time founder. And the first-time founders sometimes just don't have the patience that's required to really execute a game plan. So that's kind of one thing to think about is if you're going to move to a company to become a VP of sales, let's make sure you do your due diligence on both the founder and the company itself. The second thing that we were talking about is this sort of like level of personalization when it comes to outreach and making sure that when you're reaching out to people that you are taking the time to understand their context, to understand their background, to do a little bit of research. Because, even though you might be as an individual contributor being put in a position where you really don't have a lot of flexibility, marketing is giving you the message, you're being put on an auto dialer or being asked to press send on hundreds of emails, you really do have to try to find some time to create personalization, to really be thoughtful about your outreach, because we all get these LinkedIn messages and these emails and they're just the same over and over and over again. It doesn't work. It's not going to work. And the other thing that's going to happen is that you're going to damage your reputation, your personal brand. So you have to have some ability to provide thoughtful outreach. I guess one last thing I'll just point out, which I mentioned on the show when we were talking. If you're a VP of sales, if you're a leader, if you're a sales manager, it doesn't matter. If you are responsible for a group of people, one of your number one jobs is recruiting. Your number one job, one of your first jobs is to make sure that you are a person and a human that other humans want to lend and lease their careers to. And you also have to take it upon yourself to do some of that same work that you've done as an individual contributor when it comes to reaching out to prospects and reaching out to candidates and developing a long-term relationship and being thoughtful about that candidate's experience and context and demonstrating that you are a good person for whom to work. And it's a very similar process to a sales process, right? It's a long-term relationship, and when somebody goes to work for you, they are buying your expertise. They are becoming a customer of your solution, and your solution is hopefully their professional advancement and career development. So be thinking about that. It's not about being whipping people into shape. It's not about being a real hard ass and demanding a certain number of calls. It is about creating an environment where other people want to give you their career. And you have to demonstrate that leadership by being somebody that cares about them. And it starts with the recruiting process. So this has been Sam's Corner. Before we go, we want to thank our two sponsors, LucidChart Sales Solution, which is the leading account planning platform for modern sales organizations. Go to lucidchart.com/sales for more information. And of course, Outreach, the leading sales engagement platform. If you want to reach out to me, you can, linkedin.com/the word in and then /Sam F. Jacobs. And I will talk to you next time.